Need three for a quorum. So we'll call the meeting to order. And first on the agenda is the approval, introduction of Coco. And Coco Thurman, right, Coco?
Coco Lee Thuman.
So Coco Lee Thuman is our new clerk, town clerk. She will be doing this. She's done it at least once before for us. She's a real professional, so she knows what she's doing, all right? As I told her, we're pretty easy. You don't need every word, you don't need everything, every detail. Just get the big picture of what we're doing and what we're saying.
Great, thank you for having me.
All right. Next is the approval of the last minutes from 5/3/23. Everybody received those. I hope everybody read them. And I know, Julia, you had one correction.
But I already corrected it with the.
It was all taken care of. That's what I thought. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I have motion to.
Second, any further discussion, deletions, additions, anything? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. So those can be posted whenever, Coco, okay?
Okay.
Next on the amendment is Bo's report. And I hope you all received Bo's tick drag, which is essentially the report, right, Bo?
That's it.
Okay.
Beginning of report, we have ticks.
We have,
End of report,
Ticks.
and as you can see, the number of ticks has gone up significantly. It's not surprising. People are complaining to me about the ticks. What are you going to do about it, et cetera, et cetera. I would suggest that this is probably 100% related to the loss of the four-poster. If you look at what's happened when it started to go up, you go back 3 years, and the average was, let's see if I got this right. Am I right here, Bo? Yeah. 18.
yeah, we were about 20.
Right. It went from 18 to 82 to 74 to 136 on an average right now. So from the 18 to 136, it's up, 7 times, 8 times. or something.
638% or something.
Yeah, and
This is one side.
I hate to say this, but I
No,
think,
that's the average of
Oh,
both
that's-
sides.
I think this will continue to go up. Unfortunately, what's happened, as we know, the life cycle for that this was actually for the, for the Lone Star tick. Life cycle is still 2 years.
Yeah, approximately.
Right, so, and each female can lay someplace between 500 and 2,000 eggs, and I forget which one is black-legged and which one is thing, but they have enormous amount of potential to reproduce and increase. And when we look at deer as having 1.5, 1.7, whatever it is, fawns a year, we see what happens. You can imagine when we have 500 to 2,000 new chick eggs being laid every year. Obviously, they don't all survive, and there's a lot of variation depending on the weather and the local environmental changes. But I suspect that the number of ticks on the drag areas will approximate the number on our, a fixed site that we use as a baseline at some point, and probably within the next year or two. Which is.
Just remind me, what's the site again that you used? Where was this again?
So there's 8 sites around the island that we go to, that I go to.
Same that we did last time.
Always, it's the same
That's
since
all I want.
2010. And I've been doing them since 2016, so it's the same site, same person,
Method, yeah.
generally same weather conditions, right? Like they don't go in training.
Right. Approximately the same time of
Obviously,
year.
this is not a rigorous scientific study by any stretch of imagination. It's just meant to be a sampling and an indication. And then obviously the site out in Mashada Point, Cody actually came and gave me a handout there this time, which was good. So we should put a couple things in context, not that most people are paying attention, but this is Lone Star nymphs, right?
Right.
So this is the species of tick and the life stage of the tick that we saw the most significant pronounced and sustained reduction following the introduction and use of four posters over a very long period of time. So it's the same species, same life stage, right? So the inference is now, in absence of that, that population is able to rebound somewhat consistently in an obviously opposite direction, and will then largely be subject only to environmental factors, right? The fluctuations. Key thing to discuss with people when we're talking about this with the public is this is Lone Star ticks, okay? You are not contracting Lyme disease from a Lone Star tick. So while you may go to the doctor and you may ultimately be prescribed some course of antibiotics of the doctor's selection, it is not to address Lyme disease specifically, tick-borne illness, other types, ehrlichiosis perhaps. These ticks are the ticks that have been attributed to the alpha-gal allergy, right? We want to, it's kind of semantics, but we want to make sure that we're using the right terms, right? You're not getting the alpha-gal sickness. You're not contracting alpha-gal disease. Your body is having a biological, physiological reaction to the introduction of alpha-galactose, which is a protein or some sort of thing like that, that comes into you from the tick that has fed on something that it got alpha-galactose from, and then you have an allergic reaction to that introduction. So that's this species of tick, that's this life stage of tick. These ticks are very aggressive, and they are almost certainly the tick that people are talking about when they say there are ticks everywhere. Ticks, 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 it's these guys. Obviously, we have dog ticks, they're around, they generally pose less of concern to most people. As a rule, everybody fears the deer tick. There are deer tick nymphs around right now, but they were significantly fewer in quantity overall, anecdotally, just in my collection, and pose infinitely less concern among people, right? Because they're small, they're not really around that much. These Lone Star nymphs are aggressive, plentiful, and really pretty much what everybody is chatting about. So just keep that stuff in context when we're talking to people, right? Don't correct them when they say, oh man, I'm getting treated for Lyme disease. You're not getting treated for Lyme disease. There's no possible way on the planet that you are being treated for Lyme disease if you know that you were bitten by a Lone Star.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what kind of.
Correct,
it is,
obviously,
okay, and
luckily the treatment is similar regardless of
Right.
species,
a
so.
little bit easier to identify when it's an adult tick as opposed to a nymph. Okay, but as a nymph, it is not easy to necessarily identify.
Can I ask,
Go, Cody.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If you get bit by a Lone Star nymph and you contract alpha-gal, is it treatable and does it go away?
Well,
So
I wish Josh was here.
Yeah.
Scott and Josh would really be the best, but so you're not contracting.
Okay, yeah, but you get the.
You have an allergic reaction.
You have an allergic reaction to
Yeah.
alpha-gal, right? So it's sort of colloquially called midnight anaphylaxis.
Okay,
And it's usually because it's delayed onset allergic reaction to the introduction of alpha-gal via red meat, right?
Okay.
Usually via red meat. Treatable is kind of,
Like any allergy,
Right.
they may be able to desensitize you to it. That's at least the hope and the theory, and they've tried it. Okay, so it's not an easy thing. It's not like you get an antibiotics and you're cured.
that's what I was curious, if it was
Right,
something.
and and I'm not,
Can I offer anecdotal stuff from my own family?
wait, no, not yet, let me finish.
Example, like-
I'm not an expert on it,
Yep.
okay? And that's, but my impression the last time I looked at it, last time I talked to people, they were trying to desensitize people to it. How successful it is, I don't know. My impression was, and are you able to outgrow it, so to speak? And again, the answer may be maybe yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure, but it does seem like it wanes with time, to the best of my knowledge. Again, I wish that Josh or Scott was here to be the expert on that.
I was gonna say if Josh were here, he could like go into more detail, but like I have two family members that got the alpha-gal allergy, and one person went and tested it like 6 months later to find their number. And I don't remember the threshold, but there's some number that if you fall below that number, your doctor will usually say you can reintroduce the meat. Another family member went tested 6 months later, it was still high. So that person just continued to avoid meat. So those are just, I mean, again, I'm not a doctor, but those are just two.
And
very
there
different
may be
reactions.
individual doctors too, because don't forget, if you have an allergist who's working with you, he may be a little bit more up on exactly what the science is saying at that time, as opposed to a primary care guy who's very concerned. When you're talking about anaphylaxis reaction, a lot of docs will say, stay away from it, okay? So unless you've got somebody who's actually on top of it, where the literature is today, okay, you may get difference of opinions on that. So
There's also been some advice to, if you know that you've been bit by a Lone Star tick. So for instance, the other day when we were out,
Yep.
right? I know I was bit by Lone Star ticks.
Yeah.
I had them on me, I found them, I identified them, I know what they are. I deliberately avoided food products that are known to contain higher levels of alpha-gal to avoid introducing and flooding my body and resulting in an allergic
Gotcha.
reaction, right? So I gave it a couple of days where fish, chicken, pasta, then went back to various red meats. So it's just kind of, you're getting an injection of a potential allergen
Yep.
from the tick. And then if you introduce more of that potential allergen
Yeah.
through red meat, your body doesn't know what to do with it.
Right.
And
Now,
then,
the other interesting thing, and I don't remember the numbers, we have them here. Scott, I think, was in charge of a study for the infection rate on ticks across the eastern Long Island, if I'm not mistaken, and he tested every place, and some people got upset because, Shelter Island looked like it was high and, Lyme disease for this. But when you're talking about the Lone Star, the infection rate is relatively low, if I'm not mistaken. And I forget what exactly that number is, but it's not in the 20s and 30s%. It's in the 5 to 7%, I believe. I wish, again, he was here. Don't quote that number, please, okay? No, not you, and Coco, don't quote it either, please, okay? Because some of this is just, recording, we don't quite have that information. I probably have it in this package someplace here.
Just look
But-
good, find it.
Yeah, right, I could, but anyhow, that rate is not, so people that get bit by a Lone Star tick, which is what's happening most of the time now, okay, their likelihood of contacting significant disease is still relatively small, okay? It's never good, it's never, you don't want to discount it completely, but it's still relatively small, so.
I've got one more question. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Let's see. So is there, and I know that there's probably run the spectrum, but like, say you're a person that gets you end up with this allergy, you end up with an extreme anaphylactic situation. Can it be treated with an EpiPen?
Sure. Well,
So it's just like a typical, it's a typical allergen in that case.
It absolutely is. I mean, anaphylaxis is anaphylaxis, okay?
Okay.
And that's how they would treat it, I'm quite sure.
Okay.
yeah, I know that people who have, like I said,
It happens.
midnight anaphylaxis, right? So you wake up in the middle of the night, all of a sudden they're covered in hives.
Yeah.
And they're itchy and they go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And they give them a strong dose of a common antihistamine.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
Do you know of anyone that actually gets to the point of like throat closing up allergy, or is this more of like a hives?
I can't say that.
I'm just curious, like if.
It's an allergy, okay? If you get to the hospital and you've got hives, they're not going to give you an EpiPen.
Yeah.
What they're going to give you is a lot of Benadryl, probably. But I suspect it can get to that level. At least that would be how, on the outside, okay?
People have to have different reactions to it. Like one person
Right.
said their mouth was itchy, and somebody else said they felt like hot and flushed. I don't know. So
Yeah, people get different reactions, but even that beginning of that itchy throat, itchy mouth, that's beginning of anaphylaxis.
That's allergen, yeah.
Okay,
hives seems to be
right,
a very common thread.
right,
Like
right.
most of the people, that's usually what gets them to the point that they're like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, Cool, thank you.
Well, anything else? Any questions from the public? No. And next is our educational report by Julia.
Yes. So I'm going to start with the social media point first. So Scott and I corresponded, I guess it was early June, and he provided me with something that was really good that was off of his website. We actually posted that. It went on the town's social media. I don't know if it was Instagram or Facebook, or maybe both, that went out. And then we also posted when, so West Hampton Beach had some local hunter in-person training courses, both bow hunting and the general hunter ed. So Christina distributed that for us as well, just in case there were any people from the public from Shelter Island that wanted to go to that. 2 people from Shelter Island did go to the hunter ed, so we got 2 new people certified for hunting in the fall. So that was good. Then the next thing was, we got the archery program set up, which is probably our biggest accomplishment. I'm very happy about it. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So both classes are almost, well, one class sold out within a couple days. Second class is almost full. It's being offered on Saturday and Sunday. We are now doing the archery at St. Gabe's Field. So that's where it'll be on.
Have you heard anything back since our meeting out there?
Yes, everything's all good.
Good,
Everything's
okay.
fine and set to go, so. I spoke with BJ, Amber, and Stephen Kiley, so.
Good.
All right, so that's all set. And then, yeah, and it was Doug Sherrard, who is a local hunter. He's probably, you guys know him as, he's on the Water Advisory Committee. So he and I went and got certified together, just so that it's not just all on me in case I get sick or have a backup sub teacher. So Doug got certified too. We had a great time. It was about 13 other people from different schools. And they brought in a local school around noon. It was the Catholic school from Staten Island, and those kids are archers, and they're an archery program. So we had to run the line and with kids who knew what they were doing, and it was a lot of fun, good time. So that's all set, and I also have two assistants for the class, both of whom are looking to be hunters. So they're going to be assistants with me and helping out. So I think it's I'm very excited about it. So I actually have already had parents asking about August. So Bethany and I put it on the schedule for August or 2. So that is it for me.
What are the dates of that?
It's Saturday. The younger kids, so 9 through 12 is from 9 to 10. 13 to 18-year-olds are from 10 to 11 and then 11 to 12, pardon me.
10 to 11.
10 to 11, 11 to 12
On a
Saturday, yeah. So the younger group goes first, the older kids go second. And then on Sunday, it's 11:30 to 12:30, ages 9 through 12, and then 12:30 to 1:30, ages 13 through 18.
You could just put that out somehow. You have it posted somewhere?
It's posted it actually went on the town, it's on the
On the town
town
website.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the rec
And
schedule.
we're doing 2 days a week because that was a recommendation.
Yeah, after we did the training, the training really helped clarify everything. And actually, I should also add that we needed a few more materials after we did the training. So we actually had some good thing happen. We got an extra grant from the county, so we purchased backup bows. Because I learned at the training that if you lose some equipment, and I have to send it out, we're down a couple bows. So we got a few more, we got more arrows, we got ground quivers, and some of these posters that I had to make up for the kids. So those were all handled through the grant. And the class was actually able to be offered for free. So there's no cost.
Where is the material being stored?
It's being stored at the Legion Hall in the rec center, where all the equipment's being held for all sports and rec center stuff.
So upstairs in Legion Hall.
Yeah, it's upstairs in Legion Hall, yeah.
Anything else? Questions, Jim? Anybody? Okay, next on it is ethics code. Just want to mention that you have received on your town email that there is an ethics code which has been changed from the previous years. Everybody is required to read it and certify that you read it, send that form in saying that you have, okay? Next.
Wait, Jim, is
Go
it
ahead.
a form or is it just, you just write back saying you read it or?
I think, and I haven't done it yet, okay, there's a form there, you can, if you can do it online, and do it online, or you can copy the form and send it in, okay? That's all on that, and then liaison input, James, you have anything?
Two things. Number one, well, first of all, that article that came out in the Stockholm Reporter, which made it sound like liaison was very disappointed with the results of the tier management. It kind of had that kind of overtone to it.
I didn't read the report.
I don't think I phrased it that way.
I don't know.
I don't think I phrased it that way, because obviously I have the deepest appreciation for all the people who put the time and the energy to go out there and do it. Without them, we'd be screwed. I mean, to be very honest with you, we'd be up a tree. You know, we need those people, we need more of them, and my only concern was, and as I voiced it then, I voiced it before the start of October 1st, is that we do everything within our power to brainstorm ways in which we can increase the number of hunters, whether they're island hunters or off-island hunters, properties, making more profit, which I know you work on a continual basis, because obviously getting that the goal, and it was a lofty goal maybe, of cutting the deer herd in half from 1,500 plus down to 750. We know that we're slightly above that, but not closely above that. And then we've often said, Jim has often said as chairman here, that even maintenance of keeping that number at that number takes a hell of a lot of effort to keep the number at that number. You know, we had talked 2 years ago maybe about trying to, maybe another 10%, get it down to, maybe 500 or 550 or 600, somewhere in there. But the challenges are there, obviously. So I just want to go on record as saying that, obviously anything we can do, continue to do, we need to work on the deer management end of it. In terms of tick management, since we're not doing the flyover, we're not going to recommend that we spend that $25,000 to $27,000 on a flyover. I talked a little bit about, with Jerry Siller, a little bit about what if some of that money was used elsewhere, and I'm just thinking at the quail. I don't know I don't know whether it's wasted money, how many ticks a quail eats during the course of a day. I know they eat bugs in general, but not to say that they're going out and finding every tick in the area. But we introduced 1,000 of them June of last year. We introduced 1,000 adults. The difference was this year they were adults, and last time they were young quail. And I'm happy to say that getting adult quail out here is a heck of a lot better, because there have been far less incidental deaths that I see on roadways and around, as I'm taking my camera out, because these quail are grown up, they're smarter, they fly, they see danger, they protect themselves better for a lot of reasons. Adult quail are the way to go. So talking to the Clark brothers, and particularly Sean Clark, they would like to, maybe think about it twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. And I was thinking that, if we split it in half, so that we said that the community would fundraise, different homeowners associations would continue to sponsor, like a Silver Beach or something, because obviously they put them in various areas around Silver Beach, and different areas around the island all over the place, that they might sponsor one of those seasons, like the spring, and then the town pick up the other. If we thought that quail or some other herd was capable of helping reduce tick density level, and I throw it out for you for whatever it's worth, for discussion, to think about. But, it's something that I'm not looking to, obviously spend $25,000, $26,000 on this. This doesn't cost that much. If you bring in, 1,000 quail, I don't think you're spending $3, $4, $4.50 for a young quail. For an adult, it's a little more expensive at $6, $6.50, something like that. If you brought in 1,000 of them, it's $6,500. It's doable if the Deer and Tick Committee, I don't have those things in front of me, if you thought that it'd be a worthwhile venture to pursue, or any other ways in which that money can be wisely spent in order to be aimed at specifically tick density kinds of initiatives. So I throw that out for, maybe it's an agenda item you want to throw on your next meeting to think about, discuss. But I just throw it out there for whatever it's worth.
Budget season's coming.
What's that?
Budget season's coming.
Yeah,
How many ticks quail eat? I mean,
I don't know if you're gonna get the answer. I mean, my gut feeling, okay, is that it is not gonna make a significant difference in the incidence of disease on the island. You know, I grew up out here and there were quail. For the last 20 years, I've never seen one. Okay, why? You know, some people say it's the cat, some people say it's the fox, some people say it's loss of habitat. We don't have a lot of good habitat, with the exception of maybe Mishamek, okay? And even that, okay, to support a significant population of quail. How much they eat, you know, I just don't think it's it. I support it, one, because I support the Clarks, okay? And I would love to see quail out here, love my grandkids to see quail out here. But could I recommend right now, and I'll look the literature over again, but could I recommend that the town spends money on quail? My gut feeling right now is I could not, and I don't know how others feel about that. I mean, maybe anything is worthwhile trying, and you know, that's true. But if you're asking, do I think that it's going to make a significant difference? No. Okay, I personally.
I mean, I would need to see something.
You got to see some literature,
I'd like to read
right?
up on it.
Well, Scott, since Scott's on a Zoom right here, maybe, Scott, is there anything in the literature about the impact of birds like quail and tick reduction density? Have you ever seen any research on it at all?
Yeah, the most of the research regarding birds, whether it's guinea hens, turkeys, quail, is not favorable when it comes to tick control. They really, they may eat some, but obviously not enough to be an effective biological control. And also, the ticks are feeding on the birds as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's another host that they're able to get a blood meal from. So you have to think of it that way. Are they eating more than they're feeding? And typically not.
Okay,
So,
all right, that's.
let me just add to my statement too. I support quail on a individual, you know, volunteer donation basis. I have no problem with what the Clarks are doing or even donating to that, okay? But I cannot recommend it as far as the town spending money on it.
All right, so my second point is, and I had to hear that particularly from Scott.
Right.
That's important because we obviously have plenty of turkey out here too. Yeah, the fact that providing another host is another, it's just another blood meal for, is there any other thing, since budget season is coming up in the next month or so, where you're going to be asked to put together a budget, anything aimed specific other than, obviously, you can't resurrect the 4 posters, or anything else that will be aimed at tick density that you can think of?
Committee?
I mean, we've talked about, the tick boxes that, you go out and that does work, but it's, again, more for an individual property if they want to put it around their house and do it, okay?
Can I just ask, are those the papers that we used to do back in the 80s? They'd come in like a little vial. I know my parents used to put them out on the property. There was this parasite or something that would eat.
No.
Is that the one?
The one I'm talking about is,
Scott knows what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
the one I'm talking about is the cotton with permethrin on it that the mice take and they make a nest with it, and it sort of treats the mouse with permethrin so that any ticks that come on that, is, but you need, every house would have to do it. You still can't do it on a big scale. We've talked about maybe making those at least available at cost. And we didn't go anyplace with that several years ago. Scott, what do you have to say about that? Is it worth?
I just wanted to ask Scott about that
Go ahead.
other method, which I don't remember. Scott, there was, a couple decades ago, there was some sort of method where you would buy, and I don't remember, if it was like a parasite or some sort of it was a bug that grew, like, and you get them on papers, they come in these little, camera, like the same thing that you put a roll of film in, and you would toss them on your property, and they were supposed to be able to help with ticks. I think I brought it up at a meeting like a couple of years ago, and Craig Woods, I remember he was the only one that like recalled what I was talking about. Does that sound familiar to you, Scott?
No.
It's like years and years ago.
The only parasite that I'm familiar with is a wasp that,
A wasp, right? Okay, that's what it was. It was wasps.
yeah, again, it may have some impact, but it doesn't make enough impact to really make a difference when it comes to total numbers and reduction in risk. Regarding the tick tubes, and that's what those
Right.
those tubes with the permethrin cotton balls. Again, that can be very effective as long as they're placed correctly and the mice have access to them. Mice can't have to take them, obviously, so you don't want an area that has other bedding material available. But also it only targets the black-legged ticks, not the Lone Star ticks, because the Lone Star ticks don't really feed on the rodents. So you can look at it from a Lyme disease standpoint, whereas that's the most prevalent tick-borne illness. And those tubes will have an impact there, but it won't have an impact on the Lone Star ticks and ehrlichiosis.
Just out of curiosity, Scott, other than mice, do other small rodents frequent that, or is it just strictly mice?
It's mostly mice, but you have to-
Chipmunks?
What was that?
Chipmunks?
Yeah, so chipmunks, I've not read that chipmunks actually use that bedding. It's mostly the mice. And again, chipmunks have a smaller role in that, but those tick tubes can be effective at reducing tick numbers on the mice if they use that bedding. So it is a strategy that's possible.
Hate to say this, but since I just see as the incidence of ticks increase, seen it almost double here since the reduction of the elimination of four posters on the island. It's a domino kind of thing that now more people call spray companies. There are now increased spraying on the island. There's more chemical being put into the environment. To avoid that, is there any attempt on the part of the Deer and Tick Committee to take the data that you are now collecting, use it in a statement back to the New York State DEC, shared with maybe other towns perhaps, as a strategy to say, is this what this was predictable? When you put this restriction in here on Eastern Long Island, it was a death sentence for the four-poster. Obviously, you're not gonna get 25 people live around a four-poster, agree on anything. So it eliminated any use of the four-poster. As a result of this is what is now happening. Not only is, the increase of Lone Star ticks and disease in that area, but you're also starting to see increased amounts of spraying and chemicals being used. Can somebody in the DEC sit down and weigh that decision and what it is causing in terms of human health, environmental risk, and all those other things on the other end? It would seem to me, am I wrong, Scott, in trying to say that, or? I mean, isn't one having a potentially a very detrimental effect on increased chemical use and disease because of the loss of the forward poster, or you think that that would go nowhere?
Well, all those data would be everybody that other than homeowners, but commercial applicators actually have to report all use. So we would have access to those data and we would be able to track it over the years before and after the four poster. If that was something that wanted to be looked at, if it caused an increase. So we could actually get that on a commercial basis. Obviously, it doesn't, we wouldn't have that for homeowners. So
The real question is with the DEC, think about changing their rules, their laws, their bylaws, whatever, their recommendations about getting everybody's permission for it. I mean, from the beginning, have thought that we were going to have this problem as soon as we lost the four posters. I mean, I've been hunting out here long enough to see the increase in ticks before the four posters to the number after it, to now starting to see them back. And I can just by the number of tick that are on deer was obvious to me that this was going to happen. Talking to Bo a bunch, I think Bo's opinion is that they're not very likely to make an exception change or thing. I don't know, Bo. I know that DEC was never crazy about four posters. They had multiple reasons about feeding animals, about, a bunch of other things, okay? So whether or not they would do it, and now what they use for their major argument is that you're bringing deer into an area with the four poster that other people around there may not want those deer moving into their area because they call it feeding deer. I call it baiting deer. I think that's a slight semantic difference, but it's a difference. So whether or not they would change it, I would be very surprised if they would change their laws on the four poster.
If they couple, if they
Well,
just
Bob
couple
might
it
have a
with,
better feeling for
with
that.
weather change and the patterns of weather, the single biggest thing that's hurting us are mild winters. If you don't get frost line, and when you grew up, not like when I grew up in the 50s, it got cold in the winter, and the ground froze. Ticks died as a result of frost line going deep down into where they lived during the wintertime. Burning was more common. Now you're amped up by burning. Now the four poster was another. All this stuff, if you start to add it all together, it spells a very favorable future for ticks, because of all of these elements.
Yeah, but Jim, I would correct it, not correct it, but suggest that it may have to be due with critical mass. All right, the deer numbers have increased. That has increased the number of ticks. You get to a critical mass, and it is very, very difficult to knock those down in any other way. So people are going to say it's the deer population's gone up, the tick. I don't believe that with the amount of deer population, if it has gone up, is changing really the number of ticks right now. Okay, I think it's just critical mass. You've got enough ticks out there that they're feeding. They can get their blood meals from multiple sources, and they're going to have 2,000 babies every year. And that's going to be very, very difficult to break that unless you got a deer population down to maybe 10 to 15 per square mile, which is not going to happen. So, I mean, we have cold, it's seasonal and it's regional and it changes every year. And if you have a good snow cover that insulates the ticks, maybe you get more that year. We had no snow cover this year, okay? It wasn't very cold, but anyhow, Scott, I don't know how you feel about it, and then you look at places that still have severe winters, and that tick population has migrated north. When I first started hunting up in Maine, there were no ticks. They didn't even think they had dog ticks up there. Now, it's just as common up on coastal Maine as it is any place, so.
So I think when the DEC proposed the changes to the four poster program, town essentially submitted a letter of objection, right? So contacting the DEC to voice concern, especially concern that you can sort of articulate a foreseeable future based on past history, wouldn't be out of the ordinary for us to do as a town, if that was something that the Deer and Tick Committee wanted to do.
Right.
There's nothing stopping us from doing that. If I was the DEC, the first thing I would say is you can have four posters all you want.
Right.
Like, we have the method for you to do that. And I would point to the Village of North Haven, which has expanded the use of its four posters since the new regulations were implemented. And they've done that through an exceptionally robust door-to-door campaign where they have individuals who literally walk through neighborhoods and say, sign this, we want to kill ticks in your backyard. And they have made inroads with that. In my time here with the four poster, running the four poster program, and now, I don't know that there's a social call at a level that would warrant personnel knocking on doors, right? Like we sent out however many, 350 through 400 letters. We got very few back. To be fair, we didn't get very many no's.
No, it was 90-some% were in favor of it,
The
but
only thing you can say, Bo, is times change. Maybe it's
I
maybe
agree.
it's not this year,
I-
maybe it's next year,
I
maybe down the
agree.
road.
And if there is a,
If this chart continues to go up,
perhaps, right.
you will get a greater.
But just again, from the DEC standpoint, right? You're theoretically asking them to roll back a restriction that they, through their professional means, have decided need to be put in place. You're asking them to roll that back. With what counter argument? There is a avenue to reintroduce the product that you're looking for. There is no political or social outcry or relative compared to what there had been in the past. Like when four posters were first introduced, there was enough political and social interest to get something that was illegal in New York State to be legal. That's powerful, right? So that might be the level of community intervention that would be needed to address that again. And then, like Scott said, there just simply isn't data to support. While the number of ticks is increasing, without a doubt, regardless of the reason why, it's very, very hard to articulate how that translates to a issue that would be of regulatory concern, right? So maybe as time progresses, the total pounds of pesticide being used in Suffolk County increases as a result of this. It's a little bit naive to think, in my opinion, that Shelter Island contributes anywhere near enough pesticide application to see that at the county level of the reporting process of pesticide applicators have to follow. I follow that every year that report comes out. Suffolk County is already among the leaders in pesticide application across the board with all types of pesticides. Ironically, not necessarily insecticide or acaricides, but nonetheless, I suspect that an agency like DC would require some sort of empirical data to say, okay, yeah, this has contributed, or at least somewhat correlated to these material changes that are having a negative impact on specifically the environment, because the DEC is not the agency that's tasked with public health. And I just don't know that we have, I don't even know that we have the means to track that.
Scott, would you be able to, sometime in the near future, get us the incidence of Lyme as well as ehrlichiosis, babiosis, and all of that comes out for Suffolk County? I know it comes out once a year. I don't think we got last year's. And it usually comes out around this time or in the summer. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, Lyme cases are delayed. They changed the case definition, and there have been some issues with that, with getting the data from the, I think the labs, the commercial labs. So we're waiting
Okay.
on those. Once all that is, you want it for the county? I know.
No, I'm more interested for Shelter Island, okay? I'm not going to argue for the county, but if we saw a significant increase, okay, and we're talking apples to apples, at least, because, you know, it's all about health as far as I'm concerned. You know, ticks are a pain in the butt, but the fact is that if it's not affecting the health of us, you don't have a great argument. But if it's the incidence of, let's just say, Lyme disease was going up significantly over the last 3 years that we've lost our 4 posters, at least we would have an argument to go back to them and say, we'd like to go back to 4 posters and see if we can try it the way we used to do it. I mean, that's all I can think of. Whether they would be receptive or not, I don't know. Then the other question I have is for Bo, over in North Haven, who's doing the door-to-door canvassing to get that done? Is it there?
A couple of village trustees.
Couple of village trustees?
I had a meeting with them a couple of months ago.
Okay.
They just wanted to have some.
Yeah.
On our program.
Right. And then the question is that if we were to even get that permission, are we ready to do it? Okay, do we want us, you know, to go out and do it? I mean, we have always had a few people that were dead set against it. And would that be enough to, you know, to submarine it again? Or would we be able to step over them and say, no, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it the way we used to do it, which means that we don't have to get permission from everybody? Or do we just try to get permission? So I'm a big believer that the 4-poster worked. You know, very hard to prove it cut down disease, but when you cut down the number of ticks by 70, 80, 90%, if you look at the entomological risk, it should have some effect. So anyhow.
The only reason I bring it up is that we're a deer and tick committee.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And for the 12, 15 years I've been on this committee, in one capacity or another, I would say 80% of our discussions about deer management, 20% of our discussions on tick management. Now it's starting to change. You know, now we realize what our deer limitations in terms of what we can manage and how we get there. We have that, but the tick thing is going to become more of a public concern being expressed, I think, in the future, because if the trend continues, and we'll see, you know, that's why this data is very good to have. But somewhere along the line, you don't want the community saying, well, why haven't you looked? You know, I think the emphasis has to be thinking outside boxes, thinking any way we can possibly put our heads together and focus a little bit more on tick density issues. Even though if it's mission impossible, we have to make that effort to be able to do that, to demonstrate to the public that, in fact, the committee is looking at those areas, you know.
So
Even if,
time and again, municipalities, HOAs, various civic organizations, whatever you want to call them, have attempted this sort of landscape level intervention, right? Lots of times. There's numerous published studies for all these, and then, I don't know, a little town called Shelter Island did it for a long time, and has ultimately found that, to say the least, it's very complicated to try to implement a or even multiple significant strategies aimed towards one goal at a very broad level, right, the town level. When we lost the 4 posters, we put out a document, the integrated strategies for tick control, I believe, right? And we broke it down by level so it would be more applicable to or at least digestible to any individual, regardless of whether they were a simple visitor all the way up to, let's say, Mashamik or another large landowner. And there's strategies that are enumerated there. Now, granted, it's sort of like an FAQ, right? It's not like a step-by-step how-to, whatever. But my feeling for the town moving forward is more of acting as a resource for individuals. So if a person comes in and says, what can I do about the ticks on me and my property and my kids? Well, here's some ideas and concepts, and we put you in contact with the right folks if you need that. If you say, I happen to control 2,000 plus acres of land, what can I do? Hey, we have some things that would be more applicable for you in that circumstance. And being that repository of institutional knowledge from both our own experiences, but also a quick reference guide for Sam Telford study in Dutchess County and Oxfield study over here, and, you know, all of these different things that we can immediately cut through all of that junk that people find and say, this is a good idea for you to help address in your specific situation. I'm not quite sure that we're going to ultimately be able to do much more than that, pending some really new and innovative strategy, you know?
Well, that, I think you're 100% correct on that. And unfortunately, I think the public wants us to do something. And I don't think, and they don't want us to have to do what they want you to take care, get rid of the deer. They want you to get rid of the ticks. Okay. And it's almost an impossible task, you know, and I think that has to be said. We do what we can. But if people are complaining about ticks and they are not spraying their clothes with permethrin, and if they're not, you know, taking a shower or looking for ticks after every time they've been outside in the garden and washing and stuff like that, I'm sorry to say, they have no right to complain. They have to. What the literature has shown to me over the last year to two is that awareness and education are the most important things you can do to prevent tick-borne disease, all right? Doesn't prevent ticks, it doesn't get rid of ticks, it doesn't get rid of deer, but that's what everybody is pointing to. Deer population, you know, I would have loved to seen what our four-poster did to disease when we got our deer numbers down to about half of what we had, and we still had the four-poster. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. What happened was just as we were getting our deer numbers down, we lost the four-poster. But, okay, if anybody's got an idea what we can do, let's talk about it and see if it's reasonable. You know, it's easy enough to say that, well, let's do this, but you got to figure out, is it going to make a significant difference? Is it worth putting time and energy and effort into it to see if it works? What is that?
This is, you know, you talk about new business,
Yeah.
and the program coming up with the arts and crafts and the green options.
Yeah.
This tick-borne disease reference handbook is a 27-page, it's the best book I've ever seen. Describe in detail every different type of tick-borne illness. It talks about prevention, it talks about the life cycle, gives people, you talk about education and awareness as being important. This booklet is outstanding. So I contacted, it's put out by Stony Brook Southampton Hospital.
Yeah.
And it's updated. Edition 3 is coming out very shortly. The lady that runs this, who I quoted you right there, Karen, she's gonna give us 150 of these for that fair.
Yeah, she's the one that gave it to
We do this every year, Jim. Maybe it's a new addition, but we've had this out here for years.
Yeah.
The kits, it talks about $10 a kit.
Yeah.
To put the kit together, she'll get us 50 for nothing. So I can go pick them up over there as soon as the kits are coming in. Because of the tick season being so bad this year,
Yeah.
they've really hit rock bottom. But she will give us 50 free kits and 150 of these booklets.
So so at the end of last meeting, Jim B here asked me, sent Scott and I over to the office to talk to Linda Cass. I see him and Scott and Scott, you followed up with Linda because I was copied on that email about, so I think we might have just done the same thing. Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jim, we've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
Okay, every year at the Green Expo, if we don't have enough brochures or we don't have enough kits, I get them, okay?
The only point she makes about the kits, since they are costly at $10 each, you know, and getting us 50, is if you put them all out on the desk, people afraid, they just take them. And she said, she in her thing, she said, generally, let's try to get them in the hands of, and I wrote her.
I just said that's what we did. So we went around like at the fair. Well, you stayed behind. I went to every person and we approached people and engaged them in conversation. And it seemed like they didn't know, and then we asked them if they wanted it and we explained what it was. So it was more like we only gave it out to people that really wanted it. We didn't just we didn't give piles and stuff.
Even thinking out loud, the people that are most susceptible on the island are landscaping companies and our tree guys, trimmers, and all those kind of people. Maybe if we get additional ones here, maybe it's not a bad idea to reach out to them and give them a kit and give them a booklet just to help protect their own workers. I think it's a.
So Jim, that's exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about, right? Where we act as the conduit of good information, good product, good whatever.
Right.
To the people, from the people who have the information, right? Like Scott, I'm sure you know, the health department, one of the single greatest barriers to effective tick disease mitigation is communicating with the public. That's an issue with education across every board. The town recently partnered with Cornell Cooperative Extension, right? To help fund in this sort of like para NGO and public partnership for the greater good of the community, right? Made funds available for shellfish seeding, et cetera. Maybe part of the Deer and Tick Committee's budget goes to partnering with the Tick-Borne Disease Research Center to develop more of those kits and have them available in more places to more people, distributed more widely. Right? So right, like that's the type of thing. If they cost $10 a piece, they can cough up 50 of them. Well, maybe we pay for another 50 to give out to people, right? Like that's the type of direction, rather than try to reinvent the wheel and have products essentially tested or a untested experiment take place. We know that that's good information. We know that people will consume that. Let's get consumables for people, right? And move in that direction, ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Recommendation
That's
for
the
budget?
No, I'm just thinking with budget coming up, these are the kinds of ideas that we need to generate in order to protect people, to educate people, to make people more aware, and to be able to provide that kind of a resource to people to say, yeah, you have this available.
Like, we also got those tick keys the first year as a gift from the person that created them. I forget her name now. I think her name was Karen also, not this Karen Wolfrat. Do you guys recall that? There was like 2 summers ago, and we gave those out. I mean, I don't know what they cost normally, but that's another thing that you can give out. It actually helps you get the tick off. And I know people that have used it, like they said, it's good, it works.
But so much of this is after the fact, the tick is on you,
The
you're
tick is on.
identified, everything. No,
Has anybody noticed?
not what they want. They want to not to get the tick on them.
Has anybody noticed in the pharmacy whether they have, can you purchase a $10 kit? Like, do they have anything in the pharmacy specifically for ticks? I've never seen any.
I've never seen it either.
So.
I thought we had them here for free for many years.
Take one.
We did have.
Yeah,
So maybe that's another discussion, Bo, the food store. That when you go in there, that there's a rack and you say, hey, if it costs $10 to make, is this not a wise investment? You get your family out here, here's a booklet.
What are the compliments of Shelter Island Deer and Tick Committee? Take one.
Yeah.
Just like one other thing, like, how we have
$1,000, that's a lot of kids.
Doggy bags for, to pick up after your dog. I did think the other night, like, what if we had like a station, almost like where you could grab a kit when you grab the doggy bag, I don't know, like have it at beaches and like different, at like the CPF properties. Because we have the nice little brochures, but why not? And we have a sign saying, be careful of ticks, but why not have a little tick kit thing there too? I don't know.
Wait, I mean,
I'm suspecting you're gonna need 1,000 of them, not 50 of them.
right.
All right.
No, right, Jim. I mean, you're talking about maybe several thousand of these things to make a difference for people to be able to be a little bit better educated on how to remove the tick and, once it's on you, and just getting these booklets out and available. But the educational piece, what I was trying to bring up is you have $26,000, you're not flying over counting deer. The educational piece could be an explosion of ideas of how we can better service and educate and make aware, but you gotta think big. You gotta think on a larger scale. So take that money that we're doing here, put some visitor center. Let's put a bunch of them in a visitor center.
We usually give them out for free. We have a basket at the.
Yeah, And everybody my big thing there, when you work there, I would love to have Jim, your thing about, Don and I go into the Mashamic almost every day during this last
Mulberry
couple of
tree.
weeks. It's a white light tan pants, the thick socks bloused, and
That's
so you
what I got
get.
on right now, I got the insect shield.
Yes.
You guys use that, right?
So the girls came by and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You just gotta be careful, they're all wearing black long pants." And I said, I would wear something lighter so you could see them on you. They actually sat down alongside of me and we picked off numerous ticks that all of them had right on their dark pants that didn't see them, that were crawling up their bodies. I mean, this is just a smart thing that you just have to do if you want to be tick smart and lessen your chances of them.
We're buying all of our seasonals, Bo saw my lovely one-piece white
Yeah.
suit. We're buying all.
Very attractive.
Yeah, it's a good look.
Definitely.
The real question is
Like a polo.
I mean, if we agree that education is the important thing, which I think is the only thing we have right now, how do we get it out? We've gone to social media, which we just started up a year ago, okay? It's all over the website, there's lots of.
Wait, can I also add that we
Yeah.
go into the school now? This is
We
our
go, yeah.
third year going in.
Listen,
I
I'm
actually
just.
forgot to mention that, I just realized in the education report, so we did a little event at the school, again, a Tick Education Day. So, and we did the whole thing with a
Yep.
relay race where the kids had to tuck their socks over their pants, put a special shirt on, spray down with like a fake, permethrin
Yeah.
spray. I mean, so you're getting it to the kids who are then showing it to, and we also emailed all the parents.
Yeah, so
whole-
what
that's the least,
more can we put at least 2 ads, if not more, in these Shelter Island Reporter with that information. On social media now, all the time with that information. I mean,
That's all good stuff though.
right, no, I get it. And that's what we've switched to, and we've been doing it a long time, but we've also,
And you-
our emphasis is there, but what more can we do now that it's gonna get worse?
Well, we
And I
could
don't
make
have that
these-
answer.
Well, we could, as I said, at the beaches where we have, the town has spent money on putting those doggy bag things in, so
Yeah.
why not have and we can spend a little extra money on tick kits, I don't know.
It's just something to think about.
Because it is-
We have a month to think about this.
I'm thinking about it all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
chick
But
kids.
Jim, you
Yeah.
have, the committee has made a difference. All those articles you've impacted, maybe haven't impacted everybody that lives here. No. But we get new visitors all the time. New people, what's the percentage of people that come on the island for the first time and say, hey, I've been to Shelter, I heard about it.
Jim, I get it. I'm just frustrated, okay, that we can't do more with the ticks, with the 4 posters, which I hated to see go. That we're, that people are gonna blame the deer, and I don't think it's the deer right now. I think it's just a explosion of quantum, explosion from the ticks themselves, all right? So I'm a little frustrated in what more I can do to do what the people want. And the people don't want a kid to take the ticks off. They don't want the ticks on them, is what they don't want. And that's it. And, we talked about the 4 posts, and again, I'm rambling a little bit here. 3-4 years ago, my grandson was out, he's a mountain biker. And so I'm looking on websites for mountain biking, and there's one from, from Montauk all the way up to Cedar Point. Light is all part of the Heather Hills State Park. And they've got a mountain bike trail, and the other ones, I think, is at Rocky Point going out. And so I go to their, what do you call it? Their, where they get a 4-star, 5-star, reviews, their reviews. And all the 4 and 5-star reviews say how great it is, but so many ticks, read this, don't get off your bike, don't do this, every one of them almost. So then I went to Mashamik's review, okay, and their thing. And there was hardly anything about ticks 3 years ago, 4 years ago, very few. And it just told me that, that 4 poster, just the few of them that we are having out there, plus the awareness that we made them at what do you call it, Mashamik, where you were sitting there, Jim, telling people, be careful of ticks, be careful of that, made a huge difference. You saw very few complaints. I don't know if it's changed over the last 2 or 3 years since we've lost the 4 poster.
Very few people in shorts. It used to be 10 years ago, I would say better than 50%
Right.
of the people that hiked there were in shorts.
My point being is that I'm totally frustrated that we lost the 4 poster and that we couldn't have dealt with it. And 4 poster had its issues, okay? I mean, it was becoming expensive, it was becoming time consuming and everything else. But, so anyhow, that's where I'm at with it. And I'm looking for ideas, but I'm not coming up with them. And I think about it frequently.
To be honest with you, just as you bring that up at Mashama, I was the trustee. That when they did away with the 20, we had 40 on the island, 20 in Mashama. Now that was the split when we deployed to 60, and we went from 20 down to 0. And I said, what about the red trail? What about the yellow trail? What about the green trail? And can't we get 4 or 5 of them out there in key locations? And they did. They finally did. I know the TNC is definitely, but we don't have that problem of having to get consent. If you want people to enjoy the great outdoors and they do work, and you're not putting a concentration on them, it's the one area on Shelter Island you could go for hiking purposes, where if you have those 4 or 5 devices out there, they're making a difference. I don't know to what degree, but they do make a difference.
Jim, I'll tell you what the grade, look at the chart Bo just gave you. Look at the first one, right up here, where we started without the 4 posts. It was when, what do you call it, Cornell did its first year, the 2008, I think it is.
Yeah.
Look what happened over the next 3 years.
Right.
All right, then look what happened, then you cut it down from 60, I think we had down to 35 or something like that, Stayed pretty well down there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, 3 years ago, we lose the 4 posters. Where's it going?
There you go.
Okay, these are facts. And the one thing about whether or not we could make an argument with the DEC, I don't think many other communities have this, all right? And I don't know if it would make a difference or not. I don't know if my gut feeling is no, it probably wouldn't. As Bo said, they'll say, you have the ability to put it back there. Just go get permission from all the, contiguous homeowners. And we're not going to step on their toes, is what I get the feeling is from the DEC in New York. Whereas my argument would be with disease, sometimes you have to step on people's toes. All right.
Or like Jim said, perhaps people's opinion has changed.
Perhaps it would take another, it
Try
would,
to ask again.
that would be a thing. That is, if the town wants us to try that, we can try it. It's going to be letters to everybody. It's going to be, an issue. And if we don't do it on an individual campaign, because what happens is our biggest problem was people didn't respond. And we got people that responded were mostly in favor of it, okay, by a large majority. But you get one person out of 25 that are sort of contiguous homeowners that doesn't respond, okay? You can't do it.
The other thing I want to take my hat off to Dan at Mashonack.
Oh, it's like a to Dan. Yeah,
To be
agreed.
real honest with you, the trails are wider, they're better maintained, they are in the best shape, not only the road going in, but the trails. I go all over those trails and they are in great shape. They cut them, we don't do that with all the CPF properties. They're narrower, they grow in. He's done a marvelous job so that if you're walking 4 abreast, that's a problem.
And if you get off the
With
trail.
your buddy and you're just walking 2 abreast, those trails are 12 feet wide, 14 in many spots. Almost all the spots.
We can allocate some funds to preserve stewardship.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, that's another thing. If you want-
We need it around Mullen
Yeah.
So I thought of something else, but this wouldn't really be so much our committee, it'd probably be more like maybe the green options in this CPF, but where are we at with getting rid of invasives on all our CPF properties? Because I think there is literature on ticks and,
Yeah, there's
being like harbored under certain species of foliage and plants and so forth.
that, I mean, that would be,
So that would be like maybe changing the landscape of Shelter Island, and that could be a town level, that doesn't even involve people. It could be-
vegetation management is one of, so when you're talking about things like 4 posters and treating deer and getting deer under, I mean, that's a part of the issue. It's a big part of the issue, but you're not hitting a big part of the issue, which is their home. They have suitable habitat. Mashonack is very responsible for this too. If you drive through Mashonack, we're a lovely tick hotel, as I like to call it. My big push that I am doing right now with my agency is being like, we need to address our vegetation issue. We have severe vegetation problems, vegetation overgrowth And yes, addressing invasive species, vegetation, fuel loading and all of these things are things that contribute to tick problems. And there is a lot of research out there that looks at the relationship between vegetation management, I'm using that term very broadly, vegetation management and tick management. Because if you look at a lot of what they tell you, how to manage ticks in your yard, a lot of it is vegetation management.
That was the podcast.
Yeah,
that we talked
and
about
so,
last year, yeah.
and so that was actually gonna be my suggestion, if you have money and you wanna know what to do with it, and it's not a flyover, well, then why don't we look at, trails wider or vegetation management in these areas where people are recreating? Because I think that is getting to an issue that is, if your habitat can just support more ticks.
Cody, could you make us aware of either the literature or educate us on just bullet points about what, Shelter Island pretty well right now, okay?
Ish.
Tim Pertel was actually the one that.
And Tim Pertel would.
He sent me a lot of stuff on that.
Right,
so-
but he sent it more for invasives, but not necessarily for
invasive
ticks.
mostly.
Okay,
No,
well,
for tick, no, the articles were about ticks
about
and
ticks, okay.
invasive, so.
Well, I'd love to see those and see, then we could
probably
think
saw it.
about, and then the question boils down to the money we spend, is it gonna make a significant impact for the community? Okay, we ran into the same problem with burning, okay? Yeah, burning kills ticks. I mean, there's no question about it.
It doesn't kill ticks per se, it actually
What?
reduces the vegetation.
Okay.
And then prevents them having suitable habitat.
Suitable
Sorry, again, just trying to get the words right. 'cause-
Right, well, that's very important.
It's a multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
Right.
Potomac owns 2,039 acres, which makes up 27% of the land mass. They're doing their bit.
Well, we're going,
Homeowners-
hopefully going to be doing our bit.
Homeowners have to do their bit.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah.
What can we do?
But I'm interested in what can we do? If we burn Sachem Woods, or if we cut Sachem Woods, if we cut this spot,
CPF properties.
if we have some of our other properties,
More control over that.
will that, do you think that will impact the number of ticks on the
Locally,
island?
those-
Which, and then we'd ask, Scott, if that'll impact the incidence of disease, which I'm always concerned about.
So speaking in very general terms, will you ever eliminate ticks? No. But what they see with different, I'll use burning as a perfect example, because this is the one I've been doing my most recent research on. You get about, depending on your vegetative recovery of that site, about a 4-year reduction in ticks. That is not an elimination of ticks.
Right.
That is a reduction, because what you're doing is, so ticks need that moist habitat
Right.
that, comes from having thick vegetation on the ground or some form of ground cover. So if you essentially eliminate that, you're allowing that moisture and that trapped sort of heat house.
Dries out.
It dries out, and the ticks can't survive in that to a degree. Like I said, so most of the literature says you get about a 4-year, a sort of 4-year reduction. It doesn't eliminate ticks, but it does reduce your occurrence of them, just because of, and then as the vegetation recovers. The only thing, and the only thing I can say about going down the vegetation management road, whichever way that is that it's like deer management. There is no end to it.
Right, you got
It's not
constant.
like, oh, hey,
You gotta
we did
keep
it
doing
once, good job, we're all done.
It's like a lifetime
it's-
commitment.
And that's what land management is. It's perpetual management forever. If you decide that you want to go in managing something, it's expensive and it takes a very long time, and there is no end date.
But the responsibility falls on somebody. So
Somebody.
if CPF properties, if reason you're preserving and putting trails in there and wanting public and to come and to frequent these areas, you've got to try to minimize it to as much as you possibly can, to educate, make them aware, make sure they're dressed properly, widen the trails, cut the trails, maintain the trails, so that a person can go out for a nice walk and be able to far lessen their chance of coming back with some type of tick-borne illness. That's the goal. It doesn't eliminate the risk, but it reduces the risk. And that takes money, and it takes effort, it takes time, and it takes a lot of
I
management.
mean, if people do dress properly and they spray up, I'm just gonna use myself as an example. So the last 3 weeks, I've done dog tracking in 3 CPF properties. I was there in like waist-high stuff. I mean, I was there for like maybe an hour each day, hot, as heck in the sun, okay? I didn't have one tick on me when I came out, not one tick. But why I do that is because I have clothing that's treated with the same company that you guys use.
Yep.
I'm sprayed up, I'm actually like, I soak my clothes in it, and I go, and I'm totally covered up, white t-shirt down to here, and I didn't have one tick, and that's 3 different, like, major, invasives, all kinds of other stuff I was walking through. So, but I'm knowledgeable and I'm I know what to do, and maybe.
Yeah, but
they're not
more
people-
important, you take the effort to do it, okay? I mean, we can make people knowledgeable, they still have to do it.
But I think people have to understand, like, that's what you have to do. Like, I mean, I've got my socks over my and we're in town hall, but, when I'm parent, because
I'm not
I don't
gonna bite you.
wanna- No, I'm just saying, I don't.
Fix it in its room once in a while.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, that's how I dress all the time. So, like, if somebody goes to walk in Sachem Woods and they have shorts and sneakers on, they come out, they have 3 ticks, and they start complaining and saying, what are you gonna do about it? Well, I would ask them, what are you gonna do about it? You can't go into Sachem
Anyhow.
Woods with shorts in,
I had
right? I mean, am I
Yeah.
making sense, or?
Yeah, absolutely, been said a couple times today, exactly that, you're right.
I had another thought on the education side of things, because we were talking about how, a lot of people come here, we have a lot of, so if you're talking about doing an educational sort of directive or push or trying to get a particular group educated that may be able to connect with those transient folks, and I use that term for people coming and going, have we ever done a reach out to the hospitality folks on the island and make an attempt to educate them? And then
I think at one point, we maybe either talked about it or did it, that we were gonna get brochures to all of the places that Chiquit and the what do you call, Ramshead. I don't know if we actually ever did that, but I think we did, okay? That was going back when I just first got on this committee, but I'm not sure,
But like-
and again, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, but that's just, so like,
Guess we'll need 50 more things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
but that's,
first thing we need to do is a couple hundred of just our recommendations of what to do. That's on our website. Let's print it.
Yeah.
Okay, and bring them up to each of these places and see if they'll hand them
I
out
was gonna
there.
add, I do, maybe Jim remembers, I think the Good Neighbor brochure has a little thing in there about tick, right? Do you remember? Right, okay, so, and that goes to all the rental properties and stuff like, and some of the B&Bs.
I'm just even
So-
thinking, instead of
It's got a section.
Yeah. Providing, say, the Chiquit, the Ramshead, the Pridwin with information, have their managers, whoever it is, their more permanent staff come in, educate them and say, this is what you should be providing this is the information, here's where you get it, this is where, I mean, we're just one small building, but our manor house, every single room has tick information in it. I mean, given it's a little different, because if you literally walk outside, you are in tick heaven.
Right.
But I think it's still, like, yes, there is an opportunity for us to spend town money and provide that information, but these are businesses, and if they want to provide the best service for the folks that are coming here, they should be providing this information. This is a very important.
They should be.
We looked at that from a double-edged sword.
Right.
That they don't want to highlight the negatives too much.
Well, you don't do it till they get here.
No.
You don't put it on your website.
We've actually ran into that. We do not want to highlight the fact that there are a lot of ticks on it.
Right.
Heard that from the real estate industry.
Yeah.
Okay, the realtors
They don't
didn't
wanna be
want
talking
us,
about-
they didn't want us putting in the paper too much about ticks, all right? So it's not, and we should disregard that 100%, not care about what they want. That if we think it's the right thing to do,
Correct.
we should do it, okay?
Absolutely.
So the
All
next
right,
time
I think we
somebody,
beat this thing to
the
death.
next time somebody asks, what is the town doing? I think we have a few bits of information, sound bites we can give them, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right, and I think we'll try and I'll
Not to
think
mention the
about it.
stuff that we've already done, too. I mean.
Yeah. But I think what I'll do is try to think about it and see if there's anything that we can formulate into a plan that we can actually do a couple of these things, okay? I'm not sure that we can, but we will, okay? We will try to anyhow, but again, I just have to keep emphasizing education is about all we've got right now. Okay, I'd love to see more. I think for deer management, we're gonna have to, Bo and I are gonna have to try to figure out, can we get a couple more nucos for this coming up year? I mean, you know, you really just need a couple guys that wanna take 50 to 100 deer. All right, and if you can find one of those.
Couple of them.
Right, but that's what we've lost.
So we need like 4 more bows. is what-
Right, okay.
A couple of hunters
Right.
can do that.
Right. But anyhow, so we're still working on it. Our objective is to take as many deer as we possibly can, and education, and go from there. Anything else?
No, I was just gonna offer, if you need help working on a plan, I'll help you.
Okay.
So, to that end, as a committee, and Scott, you're here, Dr. Potter is, right?
Right,
Every year, August, we start talking about budget, right? We start hammering out various budget things in September, we adopt a budget in November, right? Like, this is, and it's a very convoluted process here because it's a advisory input to a budget that's part of a department that has a department, head, like, it's convoluted. But if there is a budget recommendation, line item, $10,000 on tick pamphlets and tick things, right? We need those recommendations,
Right.
so that way I can physically put them in the line items that we present and articulate
That's
that.
why I brought it up.
Right, no, right.
But
this isn't-
It is in November.
Right.
We've actually, as a town board, vote that budget in early October.
Right, so,
So the process is getting to, what reason I brought it up today, July. August
Right.
and September is the time to get this done.
on like August 8th, I'll have an email from the chief
Yeah.
saying, what's up with the deer and tick committee's budget?
Right.
Right, like that's,
Generate
I know
some
that, I know that.
Jim, who do you want to send?
I think he has a reminder.
yeah, you can send it to me, you can send it to Bo. Let me just say that
Oh, CC both of you.
you can CC both of us, because it's gonna go to Bo, and Bo's gonna represent us with the chief.
Yeah, you can always come to the.
And I always come to him, we always,
Right.
we go and
Right.
we talk about it.
So let's generate some
Let me
ideas.
just say one thing about next month's meeting is I'm getting a new left knee on August 2nd. I think our meeting is the 3rd. So I will either be in the hospital or heavily medicated, I hope.
So you're gonna zoom in is what you're saying.
Oh, he'll be zooming all right.
Maybe not coherent. Scott, if we're gonna have that meeting, which we maybe will, if we could put it off for a week or so, because we don't have another one for a couple months after that. But Scott, you may be running that meeting if it's okay with you.
That's fine, no problem.
Okay, and Scott, I did have one other question for you, which we started to discuss before you got online, was what was the infection rate for Lone Star ticks as far as leishmaniasis and alpha-gal? Do you remember? I know you had done that. You did it not just for, I'm not talking for Shelter Island. I'm just talking for Suffolk County or for the East End, whichever your study was.
Yeah, no, we have it for Shelter Island. Give me a second.
I know you do, but we don't like to do it for Shelter Island and because you only did one site on Shelter Island, right?
Correct, yeah, we only have
Right,
one,
so-
we only have one site, we only have one site per town. So.
Right, which, so I don't look at that as an accurate study for the town. But I think if you look at it for the county or whatever the overall does, do you recall what the infection rate for Lone Star ticks was?
Hold on one second.
That's what town.
I'll give you a range.
Right.
I'll bring my idiot.
So obviously, it depends on the stage. So the infection rate is going to vary from nymphs and adults.
Right.
So for Ehrlichia chaffiensis, it ranges from 0 to 14%.
Okay,
That's the infection rate for nymphs.
for the nymph.
And for adults, it goes from 0 to 16%.
Okay, so let's say an average of 7 or 8 or something in there. And my point was that many people are complaining about the number of ticks right now. They're almost all Lone Star ticks. And just so people understand that the infection rate or the likelihood of them getting an infection from that tick is some point around probably, 7 or 8 or 9% on an average. That's not to say you disregard it or anything else, but it's, even if you got bit by it, it was on you for more than 36 hours, your likelihood of getting a bad infection is still relatively low. Is that stated correctly, Scott? I don't want to misstate something.
Yeah, yes, it's for the infection rate of pathogens, ehrlichiosis is on the lower side.
Right, that's
And
right.
again, you have that window of getting it off.
Right.
As soon as you get it off, you can, even if the tick is infected, you may not be infected with the pathogen.
Correct.
Somewhat akin to mosquito bites.
Right.
Good to know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good fact, because I think people think it's a 70 to 80% rather than 7 to 8%.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point.
It's embedded.
I mean,
That's what I heard.
Right.
If you-
One tick bite and you will die.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's what I hear.
That's what I heard.
Right, yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
No, that's a common, like an actual common misconception is that you get bit by a tick, you're gonna have a disease. That's it, period.
Great kids from the city out there, and there's a bug in a pool, and the kids go splashing.
Okay.
It's dead.
Anything else? Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Scott.
Did
Right.
you want to change the date? Because I think we were kind of saying maybe we could be flexible and change the August date.
I mean, let me think about it, whether we want to put it back a month or something, and I'll talk maybe to Bo and Jim about the urgency about getting something in there. Because I think that it may be getting to the point at that point, one is we need the budget. All right, 2 is what we're going to need also is thinking about anything we're going to change as far as hunting, because we'll be already into, August,
We
September.
went from
And
August
summer's over
2nd,
and
which is a Wednesday.
Christmas is here.
August 2nd to the 16th.
Memorial Day comes.
Regroup a little.
Yeah, I mean,
2 weeks.
I should be fishing.
Gives us a lot of time.
I should be fishing by that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind putting it off if we want to do it that. I don't know if I have anything else.
16th rather than 2nd.
But let me just tell you that.
We have to confirm the availability of the.
The room, and the other thing that I will tell you is typically your orthopedic surgeon wants to see you 2 weeks after your surgery.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that yet, that I would be any better off at that time. So why don't we just wait a little bit and I'll see if we can. Worst case scenario, Scott runs the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay? All right.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Welcome to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.